Welcome to Living from the Inside Out with Holly Wade. Living from the Inside Out is about living fully, guided from your inside. Holly shares the wisdom of how your mind, body, and spirit are truly connected and that you deep down know your own answers. Holly and her guests will provide tips, practices, and inspirational stories to help you approach your life from your own heart. And here's Holly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Living from the Inside Out. I'm your host, Holly Wade with Holly Wade Wellness. Today, let's talk about yoga and the many benefits for you and your body. I actually hated yoga when I first was introduced to it, and that was in probably around 2000, late 90s, somewhere in there. And I'd gone to a conference. I was a fitness person at the time, like a hit it hard fitness professional at the time. And I went to this conference and there were some yoga and Tai Chi sessions. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go into this because, I knew that it was growing and the mind-body stuff was really starting to grab a foothold in the fitness industry. And I thought, I need to be informed on this and kind of be abreast of this. So I went to this first yoga session, and you have to understand, in a fitness conference, we're in these hotel rooms, we're in these like hotel ballrooms. So there are masses of fitness instructors or personal trainers kind of down on the floor, and then there's an instructor up on a stage. And so they're not very zen feeling, first of all. They're not really personal feeling. They're just kind of it's a conference. And I'm sitting there waiting for this session to start, and in walks this woman, and she goes up onto the stage and she smudges it, and she lights these candles, and she's got this long gray curly hair, very, very earthy and natural in her presence. And she starts speaking, and we start doing this class, and I couldn't understand. I mean, even though she was speaking English, it was a language that I didn't understand. And these movements that weren't familiar to me and descriptions of my body that didn't make sense to me. I ended up hurting more than I felt good. And so I was really turned off by it. And I was like, yeah, I'm not teaching that. In 2000, I actually had the opportunity to go to Thailand. My best friend was there. And we went into this, imagine like Central Park in Bangkok. And this huge park in the middle of the city. And it was like the working day. So the young people were at work, but in this park, think like a YMCA. Like you'd walk, so there was like this cement circular area to walk, or a walking path. And you'd walk along it, and over on this one side would be this group of people doing yoga. And then you'd walk a little farther, and on the other side, on the grass, there'd be a group of people doing Tai Chi. And then you'd walk a little farther, and there's ballroom dancing, and then there's badminton. And just throughout the park, there were all these groups of people and classes going on. And the thing that I observed, I was in my late 20s, and my body hurt from all my years of pounding. My low back had zero mobility. And here these retired people were, and they had, lines on their face, but they still just had this youthfulness and this mobility and this flexibility and this fluidity in their body. And I thought, there is something to this. Looking long term, like they didn't have knee braces, they didn't have these indicators of injury that we do in our Western cultures, in the US in particular. And I thought, wow, there is something to this. And so I came back, and I actually started teaching Pilates first, which was kind of a natural step into mind body because I was such a hit it hard person. And then because of my health, because of my experience with Crohn's disease and living with an autoimmune and my energy levels and things, I had to change it up. And so I sought out yoga, and I found a modality that worked for me. So if you have been discouraged in finding the yoga that suits you, I want you to know that there are many flavors of yoga. There are different styles of yoga. And so keep trying, because it may be the instructor that you don't connect with. You maybe are hearing some of those same things like I heard in my first experience, where you're like, I don't know how to breathe into my kidneys, or I don't know what my sits bones are, or I don't know what you're telling me to do. Or maybe you just didn't find the style that works for you. So there are all these different styles. There's Hatha yoga, which is the umbrella, a big umbrella for a lot of different styles of yoga. And it's really where you connect your breath and your movement. A lot of times instructors will simply hold a pose and really kind of engage in that pose a little more. That's the style that I like to teach personally, because I really like us to explore and to find those subtle little things in our bodies that can create some pretty major impact, that can really change our body's alignment and our posture and help to correct those muscular imbalances. There's Ashtanga, which is a series of poses, and you work toward mastery, and it actually can take a lifetime to master those, to master the series. There's Iyengar, which is very alignment based. There is Vinyasa, which is the flow style. And then of course there are the newer styles of yoga, which are power yoga, which is basically an athletic style of yoga. Those are the crazy poses that you see on magazine covers, like the arm balances and the headstands and the fallen angel and some of those things. That would be power yoga. And then there are things like hot yoga or Bikram. And that is a modern style. And so while these flavors or the package of yoga may look different, at its root, the true essence of yoga is always the same. Always the same. So the word yoga actually means to yoke, and it is a union of mind, body, and spirit. In a very practical sense. It's not all airy-fairy and woo-woo in the way that it maybe can be made out to be. Yoga, the argument is that it's been around, they're not sure if it's been 2,000 years or 5,000 years or somewhere in between there. Regardless, it has been around longer than any of us. And let's just get real about this for a second. Because I'm a big fan of looking beyond trends and looking at what has worked and what has lasted the test of time. And yoga is one of those modalities. So when you just look at yoga from the very beginning, I'm pretty sure that they didn't have sticky mats or straps or all the bolsters and Lululemon and all these things that we have now. So I'm pretty sure that you can still apply yoga regardless. That you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need to dress a certain way. You don't need to go to a certain studio. Because yoga has very little to do with the poses. It has everything to do with the philosophy. It is a way of living. And when we step onto our mats, if you are being taught by a true yogi, being a yogi is a lifetime pursuit. And it's really about inside out living. It is about becoming a better human. And when we step onto our mats, we're taking that practice, that time to practice living in the philosophy of yoga, so that when we step off the mat, we're ready for the test that life is going to bring us. So here's really the basis. They're called the 8 limbs of yoga. You have the yamas. These are the don'ts. So if you think about the 10 commandments, you have this kind of guideline of how to live. and they're actually pretty darn good things to live by, right? Think about yamas and niyamas in the same way. So yamas are the don'ts. These are the things that you don't want to do. Non-harming, that's called ahimsa. And the way this applies on your mat is that when you go into the poses, you don't want to create harm in your body. You don't want to create violence toward yourself. So you want to really tune into, okay, this is far enough for my body today. My body's telling me. Because you don't want to hurt. You don't want to create injury. And yet you still want to find that balance where you're challenging yourself and where your body can go at that particular time in your practice. So the first yama is non-violence or non-harming. Now think about how this applies in everyday life. Think about the thoughts that you have toward yourself. Think about the food that you feed your body. And is it harmful or is it helpful? Think about the information that you take in. Is it helping you or is it harming you? Then think about your behaviors. And I'm not talking about violence in terms of what we see on TV. I'm talking about just the small things that create harm. Like, are you gossiping? Are you treating others in a way that you would not want to be treated? So those are things to think about, and the way that ahimsa can be lived out off of the mat as well as on. Don't lie. That's the second yama. And I think that's pretty, it's about being honest with ourselves, because when we tell ourselves a half truth, we're still telling ourselves a lie. We're still not being truthful. It always makes me think of Jack Nicholson's character in, what's that movie with Tom Cruise? When he's on the stand and he's like, you can't handle the truth. We have to think about how that applies to ourselves and how willing we really are to speak truthfully and to be honest with ourselves, because that's where change and transformation happens. It's when we get honest, when we get really raw, really real. Non-stealing, so don't steal. And it's not just about stealing things. Are you stealing someone's time? Are you stealing someone's joy? Are you stealing someone's trust? So think about stealing in the abstract and not just that tangible taking of things. The fourth yama is wasting energy. So are you spending time doing the things that really don't matter? How much time are you spending on social media when it really doesn't matter? And maybe it's just kind of creating some angst in you. How much time are you spending on non-productive pursuits or the unimportant pursuits rather than the things that matter? How much do your relationships suffer because you're spending time doing things that really don't matter? So it's being mindful of your energy and how to utilize that when you need rest, when you need to go, when you need food, when you need things to replenish your energy instead of being depleted. Are you wasting someone else's energy? Are you an emotional vampire? And then possessiveness. Are you hanging on to things that you need to let go of? And not just physical things. So you can see how this works in the abstract. Are you being possessive of other people or controlling of other people and or things rather than just letting things flow? So those are the yamas. Those are the practices of the yamas. And when we come onto our mat, we study this like the control thing. Well, we can't control how our body feels today, but we can tune into it. So we're going to adjust based on what comes up. We're just going to let ourselves be present in the moment. We're going to create energy through our breath and through our movement. And when we're tired and we need to go into child's pose, we're going to allow ourselves to do that rather than worrying about what the person on the mat next to us is doing. See how that works? And we use our body as a tool because the body's never going to lie. So as you find yourself in poses, things will come up and it's like, yep, I need a chiropractic adjustment because this hip is tight. That's being truthful with yourself rather than in denial. So the second branch is niyamas. So the yamas are the don'ts. The niyamas are the do's. These are the self-disciplines. And discipline isn't a bad thing. Discipline is a good thing when used correctly. So the first of the niyamas is to embrace cleanliness and contentment. So that's creating that zen. That's creating, like getting rid of the things that you don't need. Kind of goes along with possessiveness. But it's creating that balance of creating a positive environment, creating that clean environment so that you can feel at ease. It's creating contentment within yourself and with what you have rather than trying to keep up with the Joneses or creating that comparison to other people and where they are in their life versus where you are. The second discipline is to purify ourselves through heat. So that's kind of why hot yoga came into being. But we do that through our breath. We do that. What it is it's sweating out toxins. That's really all it is. You can go into a sauna, you can do that. You can sit in a hot bath, you can do that. You can do that through movement. That's going to create that heat and that energy to get things moving and flowing and to get those toxins out of your body. Part of that cleanliness. See how that kind of goes together? The third niyama is to continually study and observe our own habits and then to create adjustments accordingly. We need relationships so that we can reflect back our own behaviors and go, oh, you know what? This is kind of a harmful behavior. You know what? This isn't working for me so well anymore. So it's time to rewire that mind and body, that mind and body connection and live differently. And that takes time. In yoga, we understand that to create a new habit, it takes about 28 days just to rewire that central nervous system, that brain and body connection, just to create a new highway. Because what happens is we have an automatic default. And it's been a pathway that has been hit time and time and time again. So think about it like if you've ever driven on country roads that have ruts. As people drive in those ruts get deeper, right? Well, the more we repeat a pattern, the easier it is to go to that same default rather than to try something different. And it becomes so automatic in us that sometimes we don't even realize what our own defaults are. And so it takes 28 days of conscientious doing different to lay out a whole new highway system between the brain and the body so that you've got that new default in place. It takes 40 days for that chemistry to change in your body and for that to be an easier, here I go, this is what I do now. In 90 days, it is so locked into you that you don't even have to think about it anymore. And in 120 days, it's your whole new way of being. It is part of your new essence. And think about that. That's 4 months' time. You can change 3 major habits in 1 year when you understand your mind-body connection and how to use that. And if you need some help working on that, contact me. Email me at holly@hollywadewellness.com and we'll set up a 30-minute appointment just to talk you through it and then see if you want to work more closely down the road. But that 30 minutes is a free consult, a free initial consult. So if you need some help, you've got it. You've got it. Because that's my secret sauce. And then the last niyama is to surrender to something greater than ourselves. That's our spiritual practice. And that is that letting go. That's part of that. Remember, possessiveness is the niyama, or is the yama. Well, here's the balance. Because we don't want to hang on and control. We need to just be at ease and trust that the greater good is appearing in our lives. And as we ask and as we take a step, that we will be fully supported when it is for the greater good. When that intention is to empower and to help and to uplift and create better human beings, including ourselves. See, yoga is a lifestyle, and it is a daily practice of how we live. And those are just the first two branches, the yamas and the niyamas. Now, the rest of them are much easier to practice on the mat. Not that we don't practice the yamas and niyamas on the mat too. We can create themes in a class and really just continue to be mindful of what that might look like on the mat and then how we translate that into our everyday life. Now, the practical things, the tangible things in our body are the asanas or asanas. You'll hear it said both ways. And what I've heard is that the Sanskrit really is asana. So it's like Tadasana or Shavasana, asana. Although some people will say asana. Whichever way you hear it, it's really the pose. That is all it is. It's the practice of our poses and what we learn and understand about our bodies while we're in the poses. Now, sometimes what will happen is that we can have some breakthroughs, some emotional breakthroughs, some physical breakthroughs while we're on the mat and practicing those poses. And the emotional breakthroughs happen because whatever emotions we do not express will get suppressed and find some place to stay stuck in the body. So those really sore muscles that you really can't get rid of no matter how many massages or how many chiropractic appointments or no matter what you do can be related to emotional distress. Something that happened in your life that you continue to carry in your body. And because our tissues, because that tension, that distress in our body can be so locked in and so tight, and because of the opening that we're doing in our bodies, that we're opening meridians, we're opening the chakras, we're opening these energy systems in the body, it can unlock whatever is locked in. And you may not understand it, but you might just break down into some tears or break down into a little bit of a panic or something, some anxiety on the mat as that emotional release bubbles up and can be set free. Pretty cool stuff, isn't it? I love this stuff. I love it. Pranayama is our breath. It's observing our breath. There is a real emphasis in any yoga class on your breath. And at the basic level, we're just teaching you to breathe correctly because adults somehow have lost how to breathe correctly. If you watch a baby, their belly or their back, depending on how they're lying, will rise and fall as they breathe, right? But most adults breathe very shallow and only breathe into their chest. The correct breath is to expand your diaphragm. That's the muscle through the middle of it runs horizontally. It's at the bottom of your rib cage. It runs through the middle of your body, but it's connected to the bottom of your rib cage. And that is the muscle that allows you to breathe. And as you breathe, that muscle presses down and your belly expands out and your lungs fill up and your rib cage gets to expand. And when we have healthy lungs and we get oxygen in our bodies, we're creating health and vibrancy. And you didn't have to pay a dime for that. So that time on your yoga mat, by doing that deep breathing, not only are we creating health because those inside muscles, the diaphragm and the lungs and the intercostals that connect rib to rib are getting to stretch and be fluid. We're getting the benefit of oxygen, which is antiviral. Did you know that? And we're getting this greater benefit of bringing our body from fight and flight and the stressed out state, which in our modern world we're living in, which is creating inflammation and changing the pH in our bodies to make our body a breeding ground for disease. And through that half hour or hour of deep breathing on the yoga mat, we're getting to come back into a state of homeostasis, of being at ease, of being in relaxation. And this is the state that we should be in more often than we're not. So in a very practical level, it's understanding how you have the tools to create that in your body, regardless of whether you're on the mat, driving in heavy traffic, sitting in a meeting, at your desk working on a project, dealing with someone who is creating distress in your life at the moment. You have the tools to bring your body out of that fight or flight mode and to have perspective in that longer term. Cool stuff, huh? So the next limb number 5, is dharana, and that is focused concentration. So if you're someone whose mind goes bing, bing, bing from one thing to the next, and you don't really get things done because you're kind of all over the place, this is where yoga can help you. It's to help you bring focus. It's to help you concentrate so that you can stay present with whatever it is you're doing at that time rather than multitask, and then move on to the next thing. So another way to think about it is just staying present. If you have anxiety, that's about being worried about the future, about what hasn't happened, the what ifs about the future. And if you experience depression, that's the what ifs of the past, and they're keeping you stuck. And so this practice of dharana, being focused, being present, concentrating in the here and now, can help you to release and relieve those two extremes of issues, anxiety or depression. And maybe they're not so extreme, but those two kind of ends of the pendulum. Dhyana is meditation. And of course we do that in stillness. We do that in corpse pose, shavasana, at the end of class. And what I find fascinating, I've seen this time and time and time again, is how much people wrestle with relaxation and stillness. That is the hardest pose for people to be in because it has nothing to do with being physical. It has everything to do with the mind and quieting that mind and just letting yourself be. And it's only 5 to 10 minutes. But more often than not, that is the point where when you're starting to go into that, there are people every time who are going to roll up their mat and walk out of that yoga class. And the thing is, that's probably the thing that you need the most if you're that person. Now, all that meditation is just letting yourself be, to just let yourself listen. And corpse pose is actually very spiritual because you're giving yourself, every time you step on that mat, you're giving yourself a rebirth through your physical body. We become aware of our breath because we don't have life without our breath. And so we tune in and we just get to know our breath and maybe even come to an appreciation of every breath. Like, wow, I'm alive. It's pretty cool. And then when we go into corpse at the other bookend, at the end of class, corpse pose symbolizes dying to the old self. That everything up to that point is done and over. And that when you rise from stillness, that you are renewed, you are a new person, and you're ready to move forward with greater understanding. Very, very spiritual in practice. And that's the part that I love. I love using my body because I believe that my body is the tool that God has given me to serve. And it's my responsibility to tend to it and to take care of it so that I can serve. Samadhi, that is the last branch, and it is bliss or enlightenment. That is the ultimate state that a yogi is trying to achieve. And it's when all of those other branches, the yamas, the niyamas, the asana, the pranayama, dharana, and dhyana, all are in sync and aligned. You've achieved bliss. That state of heaven within yourself. That state of just inner peace and calm and knowing. And the outside world and the outside chaos doesn't rock you because you're so anchored inside of you. How's that sound? See, that is yoga. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need to dress a certain way. You don't need to go to a certain studio. You don't even need to spend a dime. Because there are so many videos out there on YouTube. Or you can invest in taking live classes or in someone who's really studied it and start to prehab your body, because there are so many benefits to yoga. From a physical standpoint, ease and low back pain, there's so much research and evidence out there on how yoga helps to alleviate back pain. And it's the equivalent of physical therapy and some pain meds. It's the number one thing that you can do for your low back. Isn't that amazing? If you need to realign some things because of just day-to-day life, like sitting at computers or just work on your posture, yoga is going to do it. If you need to spend some time tending to yourself, yoga is a great place to start. If you have anxiety or depression or high stress or ADD, a yoga class would be really helpful in helping you to develop the tools and the skills that you need in your day-to-day life so that you can handle it. Yoga is for everyone. Kids, I have kids coming to my evening class on Tuesday nights. I have kids that come because they have anxiety and it's working. Men do yoga. There are a lot of big names out there that do yoga. You heard of Shaq? Adam Levine? Coach Krzyzewski? I can never say his name right. And when I was in grad school, we were doing yoga we were teaching yoga at the athletic center, and every athlete, so we'd teach early in the morning. I think it was like a 6 or 6:30 a.m. class. And it was 45 minutes to an hour or something like that. But every morning we had that class, we had that opportunity. And every athlete in the school at the University of Nebraska, didn't matter if you were a rifle team, volleyball, basketball, football, tennis, swimming, it didn't matter, gymnastics, every athlete had to attend twice a week. Now, when they attended was up to them, but it was part of their training. And this was in the early 2000s. So this has been going on for a while. It's not anything new. And now so many colleges have adapted it. So yes, men do yoga. Yes, athletes do yoga. Now here's my question for you. Do you do yoga, or do you live yoga? Now, if you want to learn more about how to create a yogi lifestyle, I have a Facebook group that is a membership. It's $20 a month, and I go on and do a live yoga 30 to 40 minute class twice a week, and there's one meditation a week. And then we kind of dive into philosophy a little bit more and how to live yoga, not just do yoga. So if that's something of interest to you, contact me. Email me at holly@hollywadewellness.com. And let me know if you want to join Yoga for Everyday Living. Your first month is on me. That is for you to try it and just to see. Or if you want a 30-minute session, just my time, just so that we can talk and see what it is that you need to reconnect that mind-body, to create that new habit in your life that would set you up for success. Because when we do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always got, right? Hey, thanks for joining this week on Living from the Inside Out. I look forward to hearing from you and talking to you next week. Have a great week, friends.
Thank you for joining us at Living from the Inside Out. Listen every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. To connect with Holly, just go to www.globalvoiceradio.com. Global Voice Radio is where your voice and your message is heard.